So what is the importance of cultural apologetics, and what is cultural apologetics anyway? So I think when people think about apologetics, classically and traditionally speaking, people think about apologetics in terms of defending the faith, right, from objections against the truth of the Christian faith or against the rationality of the Christian faith. So these are objections to the effect of the Christian faith as untrue or the Christian faith is unreasonable. I don't know whether or not the Christian faith is true, but it's definitely unreasonable for modern people to believe in the Christian faith. But I think there's a third kind of objection that's especially prevalent in the Western world today. And some people have called this the imaginative objection or the imaginative sort of problem. In other words, people are now saying that they're not really concerned about the truth of the matter or the reasonableness of the Christian faith. Whether it's true or whether it's reasonable is a kind of secondary issue now. People are now suddenly saying things like, well, I don't know if the Christian faith is reasonable or not. Whatever the Christian faith is, it doesn't produce the kind of people that I like. It seems to produce a way of life that is inconsistent with or incompatible with the modern lifestyle that we know about today, or the modern perspective that we embrace today. So this sort of objection is kind of saying that the Christian faith goes against the social imagination, the ideals, and the desires of the modern world as we know it today. So I think cultural apologetics forces us to be attuned to these newer objections because cultural apologetics says that apologetics is contextualized and apologetics needs to address the specific concerns of the modern world. And if the modern world is telling us that the Christian faith doesn't align with their particular understandings of how life ought to be, then I think it's important to show that the Christian faith can actually produce a life that is beautiful, a life that is actually more tolerant than the modern world, and a life that embraces diversity as God would have and define diversity for it to be. So one understanding of the cultural apologetics is really just applying what Paul was doing in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, right? In 1 Corinthians 1, Paul was saying that the Greeks demanded wisdom, but the Jews demanded signs. And Christ is foolishness to the Greeks and a stumbling block to the Jews, but Christ is actually the truer wisdom that fulfills what the Greeks wanted and the truer power that fulfills what the Jews wanted. Notice that signs and wisdom is taken up from what he knows the audience are desiring, the kind of longings that Jews and Greeks want that are very particular to their cultures and therefore ideals. Paul doesn't just reject these categories, but rather Paul utilizes them and redefines them, thus subverting their expectations, and yet shows that Christ is the fulfillment of true wisdom and the fulfillment of true power. And he is indeed a true powerful sign if you look at it from a spiritually illumined perspective. So what Paul does is that he gathers the ideals of the people that he's trying to address and then shows how Christ subverts yet fulfills the ideals that he is facing in that particular cultural moment. So I think with cultural apologetics, it's trying to follow Paul in his footsteps, and we're encouraged to ask the question, what are the ideals that this culture want today? What are their longings, and how does Christianity actually fulfill and subvert and challenge those longings, and actually is the more satisfying path forward to address those desires and longings, right? Perhaps it's issues of justice, perhaps it's issues of diversity, perhaps it's issues of tolerance, perhaps it's holism, whatever it might be. Ask questions about how the culture is perceiving the Christian faith and then show how the Christian faith challenges and subverts those expectations.